Substances that we just don't get in our culture, which is saturated with drugs. That's it. Like, it almost, like, some people would almost say, like, oh, that's ridiculous. You couldn't spend, how much time could you possibly spend on drug education in school? But it's like, well, there's a lot of drugs.
Isn't 1 in 5, I'm pretty sure 1 in 5, and it could be worse given COVID because everybody is on some sort of antidepressant. Like the rates of prescriptions for benzodiazepines and antidepressants has skyrocketed with COVID. But I thought what I last read was 1 in 5 people in the States are on some sort of psych med.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a huge percentage of the population. So there could easily be a few courses in school that taught you how to deal with these things when they're inevitably introduced to you. It's really ridiculous that we're not there yet. It's dangerous given the fact that everyone's on medication.
Yeah, and I think it can all be integrated into, teaching neuroscience and pharmacology.
They're all interconnected in such a way that it doesn't need to be like
an extra drug course.
An extra drug course.
It could be in chemistry even.
I think it's all really interesting and useful. It certainly wouldn't be bad to teach children about pharmacology. I think it would be really, I was obsessed with poisons, from the very beginning. So I think that people would actually be kind of receptive to it. But yeah, it's very tricky. It's very hard with the personal responsibility aspect as well, because I know that it's a lot to ask, like a normal person, especially, older people, you can't expect them to like learn pharmacology from scratch in order to take a medication. Like I get that it's very complicated, but I think the ideal situation is one where the substances that people want are available should they want them, and they are assumed to take responsibility for their own actions, 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 their
Pretty crazy story. It is a crazy story, and what I really appreciate about what he does is I think there's a lot of perhaps justified insecurity in the world of drugs. So people have been oppressed for such a long time that they need a justification of some kind.
I'm using psychedelics because it's religious. I'm using psychedelics because it's medical, it's therapy. I'm using psychedelics because it's traditional, it's part of my religion. I'm using psychedelics for this reason and that reason. It's very rare that people will just stand up and say, I'm using these things because that's my freedom, and I don't need to justify it. I don't need to say that I have chronic back pain and it's treating it and I shouldn't be allowed to treat my pain. It doesn't matter. It's just my choice as an adult. Even if it's bad for me, it's my choice as an adult.
Yeah.
It needs no justification.
Like whiskey.
Yeah.
I mean, whiskey's celebrated. It's on television. You can watch ads for whiskey during TV shows. It's like celebrate it. Have a glass of whiskey. And I like whiskey, but you drink a lot of whiskey, it will fuck you up. And we don't care. We're just accustomed to it. It's become a part of our culture. So it's traditional use. It's sanctioned by the government. You got a nice tax stamp on it, and so we're okay with it.
But all these patterns I just described emerged during Prohibition as well. So alcohol is prohibited. So you have medical whiskey. You get a prescription from your doctor for whiskey because it's good for your nerves.
One of our sponsors, Buffalo Trace, they've been around longer than the United States. They've been around since 1773, and they made whiskey during Prohibition. They're still running. They're the longest running distillery in America, and they made whiskey for medicinal purposes during Prohibition. It's kind of hilarious.
And of course we see it with cannabis as well. And I get it. I understand why people are doing this.
I should be working, I should be studying, I should be being productive, and that's almost exclusively because of how you've been socialized. What do other people say about people who take that drug?
It's true and it's not true. It's very complicated, I think, with cannabis. That's one of the more complicated ones, because I think that one of the advantages and disadvantages of cannabis is that it allows you, at least allows me, it does different things to everyone. It allows me to take things less seriously, a lot less seriously. And that's great sometimes, and not great as a daily alteration of consciousness. So, it's very easy for me to just, I'm receiving like 100 emails a day from disgruntled weirdos, and I think, oh, what is wrong with these people? How could they possibly watch what I made and think and extract that of all possible interpretations? What is going on? But then if I'm stoned, I think, all right, well, I don't know. I guess people think strange things, and that's just the way it's going to be for that guy. And so that can be extremely beneficial if you're living a frustrating life, or you're just totally occupied with your professional responsibilities or your studies or whatever. But too much of it, at least for me, and it has a bit of a dissociative type effect where I'm not as engaged with the world, which again can be beneficial. It really just depends on the context. And I agree with you that you could make a valid argument that this is all conditioning, and especially conditioning from a capitalist society that values productivity over everything else, over joy, over relaxation, over camaraderie with friends, over almost anything. So yes, I think that there are many extremely stoned people who are living a beautiful existence that is disconnected from our American, European value system, where if you're not just constantly generating things, you're of no value. And of course, there are also people that get stoned all the time and are immensely productive and are able to, do huge amounts of work. And I have a lot of respect for those people. I'm not one of them.
No, me neither. Do you think any drugs should be illegal? What's your stance on the legalization of drugs?
No, I do not think any drugs should be illegal. I think that, and I'm aware that my perspective on this can sound a little bit doctrinaire, and I try to remember that there are people who are just so irresponsible that maybe certain types of regulations are required for public safety. Certainly I think that it's really good that radioactive materials are regulated. I do. I think it's that's the thing. The more time that I spend thinking about these subjects, and I think about them every day and have for over a decade, the more unsure I am about almost everything. And I don't find myself agreeing with almost any simple interpretation of anything that's happening. I read these two books. There was a book that came out recently, Empire of Pain, and then there was a book before that, Painkiller, about the Sackler family. And they make a very persuasive case that the Sackler family behaved in a totally unethical and greedy way in order to make an enormous amount of money selling oxycodone.
But it's not only them.
Certainly not, no.
I listened to your Joe Rogan episode where you guys talked about that, who were complicit, and I feel like sometimes people get so focused on the one person as a scapegoat instead of looking at the systematic issue of how did this even become a thing.
And that's the crucial question. Did Richard Sackler do all of this? No, it was an enormous network that involved thousands and thousands of people, including the users themselves. And if we just pretend that no physicians knew, none of the people using the drugs knew, no one had any idea what was going on except for Richard Sackler, then we're doing everyone a disservice because we're buying into a lie that feels good. It feels good to have one bad guy, and you can say, Richard Sackler, lock him up, take away his money, give him the chair. But where does that put us the next time something like this happens? And it's never going to stop happening. We will always live in a world where people are trying to sell us things that make us feel good that might be bad for us, whether it's drugs or junk food or social media or who knows what else. I mean, this is just the reality of our existence, and the only way that we will be able to survive in this world is through cultivating a sophisticated understanding of those dynamics and learning to deal with our own suffering in the healthiest possible way, which is not easy, but that's the reality. And so, like, I have a friend who was very addicted to heroin, and he said something to me recently that I thought was really useful. And he said, you know, people in serious recovery, people who are in Narcotics Anonymous meetings, are not blaming the Sacklers for their problems, right? That's journalists. That's people who are telling stories because it feels good to tell the story. But when you're in the thick of it, and you're trying to get better, where does blaming Richard Sackler get you? It gets you nowhere, because ultimately it's your life, your decisions, and your own survival that matters. It's your life, your decisions, it's your life, and your own survival that matters. It's your life, your decisions, it's your life, and your own survival that matters. It's your life.
Oh,
Demons, be gone!
be gone, demons.
Be gone!
Leave this studio!